We're going to get started this morning with that new information we're learning about the FBI's search of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida.
NBC News has learned that Trump's legal team was in discussions with the Justice Department as recently as June about presidential records stored at Mar-a-Lago. Christina Bobb, one of Trump's attorneys, disclosed those discussions to NBC News. She says she was present during the search on Monday. Bobb says the FBI removed about a dozen boxes of documents from a basement storage unit in the search at Mar-a-Lago. She also confirmed that the search warrant left by agents showed they were investigating the potential violation of laws related to the handling of classified material under the Presidential Records Act. We're also learning more about the timeline. Two sources familiar with the matter say that FBI agents arrived at Mar-a-Lago around 9 a.m. on Monday to conduct the search and left around 6:30 at night. These new developments come as Republicans from all across the party rally around the former president. That includes a group of House Republicans who met with Trump at the golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey last night. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard is outside of Mar-a-Lago in Florida with the latest. Vaughn, good morning to you. So first, what are we learning about those June meetings that took place between the Justice Department and members of Trump's legal team?
Right. Good morning, Joe and Savannah. We are being told that that meeting on June 3rd took place between these Trump lawyers as well as DOJ officials. This was a meeting that I am told by a source familiar had been in negotiations for a period of time with the Department of Justice, who became interested in these potentially classified documents, these materials that were taken from the White House there in those final days of the Trump administration and brought here to Mar-a-Lago, the place that has since become Donald Trump, the former president's residency. It was there at Mar-a-Lago on June 3rd. The former president was there himself, and I am told that the former president had interactions with the DOJ and even was the one who led him into this specific room to show him where the materials were supposedly remained. There is at least one lock that was on this particular room. I am told that at that point that Trump himself authorized to have a second lock put on this door. That is when, again, a source familiar from Trump's side of this says that they had intended to completely comply with the request of the DOJ, but then that led to ultimately this week in which the search warrant was executed and multiple boxes of documents and materials were removed from the premises.
Now, Vaughn, it looks like the search warrant the FBI agents had was focused on finding those classified documents. And as you just mentioned, we know investigators did, in fact, leave with documents, leave with these boxes. What is Trump's team saying about this search and what was taken? Do we know anything at this point about what those documents are?
That is a big question. And again, this is from Trump team's understanding. They say they believe this investigation is into, again, the potential materials here and the classification of them. Just take a listen, though, to Christina Bobb, one of the lawyers for Trump, who says that she was present there for that June meeting. Take a listen.
I don't think that there was actually anything there that's worthwhile. We'll see what they come up with. You know, if they did, it'll be interesting, especially since they precluded me from actually watching what they did. But at this point, I don't necessarily think that they would even go to the extent of trying to plant information. I think they just make stuff up and, you know, come up with whatever they want. And that's the way that they will have to proceed in order to actually try to indict the president, because they don't have anything. There's just nothing there.
And I think that it is very, very important to note there. Not only did Christina Bobb suggest the planting of material by a preeminent law enforcement agency in the United States of America, but just in the last 10 minutes, Donald Trump himself put out a statement in which he suggested that perhaps there was planting. And I think that needs to come with all of the caveats here, is that neither of these individuals, the former president or his lawyer, have presented any evidence to suggest that that would take place. And this is a further effort to undermine faith in America's law enforcement agencies. And that at this point here, in order to get this actual search warrant, that the Department of Justice would have had to go to a federal judge to seek approval with that there was probable cause of a crime. Of course, the judge approved that. Now the next step of this is to go forward with the execution of the search warrant, which they did, and continue the investigation. And ultimately, it'll be at that time whether the Department of Justice were to indict the former president or other individuals.
Vaughn, so we're seeing members of the Republican Party come to Trump's defense so far. Looking at the reaction so far in the last couple days, if Trump runs for president again, does it seem like the FBI search is going to strengthen his support within the party, or could it weaken it?
You know, I was talking with a source familiar who had a conversation with Donald Trump himself yesterday afternoon and said that they were very happy with the outpouring of support and defense from Republicans at large across this party. I mean, not only did the likes of Ron DeSantis, but also even Mike Pence coming out with statements supporting the former president and calling into question the actions of the Department of Justice and demanding that the Department of Justice lay out its reasoning for executing the search warrant at such a high level against the former president here. But when you look at the responses across the board, this comes at a time in which we're less than 3 months until the midterm elections here. And Donald Trump has openly talked about running for president and announcing his campaign before November, within the next 3 months here. And so they view this as an opportunity to turn it on its head and, again, make Donald Trump the political martyr here, somebody who is being attacked by the political opposition. Yet again, though, we must reiterate the fact is that there is no evidence that has been presented by Donald Trump or his allies to suggest that this was some sort of political opposition effort here, and this will ultimately play out within the Department of Justice.
Vaughn Hilliard near Mar-a-Lago. Vaughn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today, President Biden is expected to sign the Bipartisan PACT Act, the latest victory in what has been a major month so far for the White House's agenda. That bill expands life-saving health care benefits for veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, those who were exposed to toxic burn pits while deployed. The legislation passed overwhelmingly in the Senate last week by a vote of 86-11 after it had been recently blocked by some Republicans. Joining us now is NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee. So, Carol, this is a major win for those veterans who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. It did not come easy. Remind us why there was a little bit of pushback against this bill last week. And then looking ahead, what does the president have planned for the signing today?
Sure, Joe. Well, this is something that has had bipartisan support for a very long time. What happened was there was a hiccup after Democrats had this bill on the Inflation Reduction Act. Republicans then said that they weren't going to support this bill because of some technical funding issue that they said was in it. Nothing had really changed. There was a big public pressure campaign on Republicans to reverse course, and they did, and it passed ultimately with that overwhelming bipartisan support that you just mentioned. Now, what the bill does, it expands health care eligibility for more than 3.5 million veterans who were exposed to toxins, and it also makes it easier for them to qualify for VA services. And it also has, this list of 23 conditions, including some respiratory conditions, and it cuts a lot of the red tape, a lot of the paperwork that's required for those who have these conditions to receive care. It also doesn't just deal with those who've been exposed to burn pits and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's more than that. It's things like those who've been exposed to Agent Orange, those who've served in other war zones, who may have been exposed to other sorts of toxins. And a large chunk of this bill also, Joe, goes to research on these sort of toxins and how people serving overseas in the military might become exposed to them and what the effects of that are. Now, one thing to look for in the president's bill signing, which he'll do around 10 a.m. at the White House, surrounded by a number of cabinet officials and others, is this is something that's very personal to him. We've heard the president talk about his late son, Bo, who served in Iraq, that he had exposure to burn pits and that he had died of brain cancer. The president often makes that link there and talks about how personal this is to him and his family, Joe.
Carol, this also comes on the heels of President Biden signing into law the bipartisan Chips and Science Act just yesterday. Remind us, what's in that bill? What does that accomplish? And what's the White House saying about the signing there?
Well, this is a bill that the White House says is designed to boost manufacturing here at home, particularly when it comes to technology. It's another bipartisan accomplishment by the president that he's talking about and going to tout. And so what it does is it invests a lot of money, billions of dollars, $52 billion in subsidies for companies that do this sort of manufacturing, another billions and billions of dollars more, and just in investing in the research and development and things like that. And the president is casting this as a bill that will create jobs here in the U.S. Take a listen to what he said.
Folks, we need to make these chips here in America to bring down everyday costs and create jobs. Don't take my word for it. Listen to some of the business leaders here today and across the country. They're making decisions right now about where to invest and ramp up production for these semiconductors. Many are foreigners making investments, companies deciding where in the world to go, and they've chosen the United States of America.
This, again, is another legislative achievement the president's had, a string of those lately. Expect him to talk about this, among others, while out there campaigning for those midterm elections. The issue here, Joe, is that this is not necessarily something that Americans are going to feel. There's a lot of economic concern out there. That's still people's top concern heading into these elections. And this is a bill that's really designed for the longer term.
All right. Carol Lee, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
We turn now to a story that has left New Mexico's Muslim community frightened and in mourning. A man was taken into custody last night as the prime suspect for the killings of 4 Muslim men. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas has the latest on this story.
Police say they've arrested 51-year-old Muhammad Syed, identified as the primary suspect in the recent killings of 4 Muslim men in Albuquerque.
A tip from the community is what helped us lead us to this subject, and what helped us eventually find the car that we put out just 2 days ago.
Authorities said an interpersonal conflict may have led to the shootings. Syed is being charged with 2 homicides, the killings of Abtab Hussein and Muhammad Afzal Hussein.
We knew Albuquerque would step up and somebody would find and identify that vehicle for us, which is exactly what happened.
The 4 killings taking place on different evenings in this section of the city, 3 of them in the last 2 weeks. On Sunday, authorities released a photo of the suspect's car, pleading for the public's help and adding a $20,000 reward for information. Today's news, little comfort for Sharif Hadi, the brother of victim Mohammed Sair Ahmadi.
Everybody's coming to me and they're crying for him. If you lost somebody, you never get it back.
The latest victim, 25-year-old Naeem Hussein, who was found dead Friday night, just hours after attending the funerals of 2 of the other murder victims, Muhammad Asfal Hussein and Aftab Hussein, all 3 originally from Pakistan.
All right, Guad Venegas, thank you for that report.
Let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
And Bill Cairns is with us this morning. Bill, good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you guys. Look, I even got a little pink on. My daughter made me a pink bracelet. I got on my wrist. We're good to go.
And you brought cool weather, too.
Yeah.
Cool weather here in the Northeast.
Cooling down. Wow. What a treat, Bill.
I know. I'm back, and everything's just, roses and sunshine. Unfortunately, for some people, though, it's not quite as nice as that. So let's get into our flash flood risk for today. That's kind of the problem over the last 3 weeks, besides the heat. Obviously, what happened in Kentucky, and then the flash flooding we had in Maryland and Denver and Death Valley this past weekend. And we do have a chance of seeing similar scenarios later on today. The biggest heads up, of course, is going to be for areas of Kentucky that are under, a slight risk of flash flooding, and Washington, D.C. Those 2 areas have been hit a couple times over the last couple of weeks. The soil is saturated. Right now, we're fine. There's not a lot on radar. It's typical afternoon stuff, and we're under a flash flood watch. It goes from that area of eastern Kentucky, almost all of West Virginia, and then into the Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. Again, this is a lot of hilly areas, and you get the central Appalachians, and historically, that's where we've seen a lot of really bad flash floods in our country's history. So I paused our radar at 6 p.m. and noticed that big red blotch there near Washington, D.C. That's the indication, at least the potential, for a lot of heavy rain on the I-95 corridor from D.C. southwards to Fredericksburg and approaching Richmond. And then if we track that back through West Virginia and areas of Kentucky, isolated strong storms there, too. So keep an eye on that. Then the front pushes to the south. Some drier, cooler air works in. I think on Thursday in areas from Kentucky to D.C., we're going to be just fine. So how much rain could we get? There's the possibility of 1 to 2, 3 inches in isolated cases, and that's what this is going to be, isolated flash flooding. So the forecast for today, and as Joe and Savannah were hinting at, everyone from about New York City northwards through New England and the Ohio Valley, all full of smiles. Look at St. Louis, 83 degrees. After the summer you have had, that is gold. Chicago, 84. Enjoy your lunch outside today. Is about as nice as it gets for the middle of August. It's still hot and humid in other areas. And, of course, coming up next hour, as Savannah requests on every Wednesday, you will have your weekend forecast.
All right, there we go. We love the weekend forecast tease, Bill, as always, on Wednesdays from you.
I know.
Thank you, Bill.
See you in a bit.
Great to see you guys.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.